Let me transport you to that specific Sunday, a sweltering, humid afternoon deep in the heart of Texas. It was the moment I truly understood my marriage was a facade. I wasn't truly loved, I was merely endured. We were gathered at her parents' home in Plano for their customary family lunch. This was a ritual they observed with absolute dedication every second Sunday of the month. Her father was outside manning the grill, her mother was inside loudly directing everyone, and the whole family was scattered about. They were all pretending to enjoy each other's company far more than they actually did. You know the type of gathering. I never quite fit in at these events. Her family was boisterous, fiercely opinionated, and overly involved in everyone's lives. In contrast, I am a much more private and reserved person. My work as a remote cybersecurity consultant means my days are typically quiet, organized, and calm. Her family, however, treats every get-together like a comedy roast battle, and I had permanently become the designated punchline. But on this particular Sunday, the atmosphere felt different. Or perhaps I was just finally allowing myself to see it clearly, because I had stopped trying to ignore the obvious signs. Ashley had been emotionally distant for months. There was no affection, no meaningful conversation. Every interaction felt purely transactional. If I walked into a room, she would suddenly become intensely focused on her phone, as if I were invisible. You ask your wife what she wants for dinner, and her only response is, "I don't care. Just don't make a mess in my kitchen." That was the profound level of coldness I was living with. So, it's about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and we're all seated around their large wooden dining table. Her dad is holding his usual iced tea in that worn-out Dallas Cowboys mug. Her mother is busy correcting everyone's table manners, and I'm just sitting there, trying my best to become part of the furniture. Because whenever I draw attention to myself, it never ends well for me. And of course, on that day, Ashley simply couldn't resist the opportunity. It began with a small, critical comment. She pointed out my shirt, claiming it was wrinkled, which it absolutely was not. I was wearing a light blue button-down with jeans. It was clean and perfectly presentable. But she loudly asked, "You couldn't find an iron this morning," in front of the entire family. I just forced a smile and nodded, refusing to take the bait. Then the subtle jabs shifted to my career. She turned to her uncle and said, "Well, Ethan works from home, but it's not like he's saving the world. He just clicks buttons all day." A wave of laughter followed. Some of it was polite, some of it was genuine mockery. I just kept chewing my food and stayed silent. But then she became emboldened. I don't know if it was the wine, the audience, or just her own pent-up bitterness finally overflowing. She looked directly at me from across the table, gave a nasty smirk, and declared, "Honestly, I don't even know how I ended up with a man who needs a GPS to find a bedroom." The room fell into a dead, heavy silence. It lasted a solid 5 seconds. Forks stopped midair. Someone even choked back a nervous laugh. I couldn't bring myself to look at anyone. I just stared down at my plate, wishing it would miraculously open up and swallow me whole. And the truly painful part wasn't even the cruel words themselves. It was the way she delivered them. The way she looked at me as if I weren't even a human being. As if I were some pathetic charity case she was saddled with. It was as if everything I had ever done for her, my patience, my unwavering support, paying half the damn mortgage, none of it mattered anymore. I had been reduced to mere background noise in her life. Her cousin, Rachel, was seated just 2 chairs away from me. She had been quiet the entire afternoon, mostly picking at her salad. Occasionally, she would glance my way, as if she could sense the emotional storm that was brewing. Rachel and I were never particularly close. We exchanged polite conversation at these family functions, but she was always the quieter one, lingering on the edges of that loud, judgmental family. I knew she had been through a difficult divorce herself. She had moved back to Dallas last year and started working in real estate again. So, after that humiliating comment, I stood up and went to the kitchen to refill my glass with sweet tea, nothing stronger. I just leaned against the counter, trying desperately to steady my breathing and my emotions. The house was still full of loud voices and noise, but to me, it all just faded into a dull, distant hum. And then I heard the distinct sound of heels on the tile floor behind me. I turned around, and it was Rachel. She didn't say anything at first. She just looked at me. I mean, really looked at me. It wasn't the usual polite, fleeting family glance. There was no judgment in her eyes, no pity. It was something entirely different, something sincere. Then she spoke, her voice soft, barely above a whisper. You don't deserve that. Seriously, no one does. Come upstairs for a minute. Just to breathe, just to get away from all this. I didn't move a muscle. I didn't even form a response. I just stood there, my heart pounding in my throat, unsure if I had heard her correctly. She didn't try to touch me. She didn't offer a reassuring smile. She simply turned and walked back through the hallway and started ascending the stairs. Now, listen to me carefully. I did not follow her. Not right away. I stood there completely frozen for a full minute, just staring down that hallway. It felt like a test, a crucial crossroads. Walking up those stairs felt like crossing a line I could never return from. But not for the reason you might think. This wasn't about infidelity. No, the real line had already been crossed, repeatedly, by Ashley. She crossed it every time she treated me like an unwelcome stranger in my own home. Every time she made a joke at my expense, as if my worth was a topic for open mic night. Every time she looked right through me as if I were made of glass. So, yes, something inside of me finally snapped in that moment. But it wasn't a hot, impulsive anger. It was a cold, clear, and calm realization. It was as if a thick fog had suddenly lifted, and I could see the entire situation with perfect, painful clarity. That simple moment, Rachel's quiet voice, her raw honesty, the simple act of her seeing me, it cracked my world wide open. I didn't follow her upstairs that day. I walked back to the dining table instead, sat down, and remained completely silent. Ashley hadn't even noticed I was gone. Her uncle was telling some long-winded story about fishing at Lake Ray Hubbard, and she was all smiles, acting as if her cruel humiliation had never happened. But something monumental had happened. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just done. Done trying to earn her affection. Done begging for basic human decency within my own marriage. Done being the family's designated doormat. That Sunday lunch didn't break my spirit. It violently woke me up. And Rachel, she wasn't a temptation or a problem. She was merely a mirror. She was the reflection that finally allowed me to see exactly what I had been tolerating for far, far too long. And you can trust me on this, what happened next wasn't loud or dramatic. It wasn't messy. But it was utterly final, and it was going to be the coldest, most peaceful ending that Ashley never saw coming. People always assume that marriages collapse because of one catastrophic event, a discovered affair, a screaming match, some final, unforgivable straw. But that's not usually how it happens. More often, it's a slow, silent leak. A gradual decay you don't even notice at first. You're just going through the motions, constantly telling yourself it's just a difficult phase. Until one day, you look at the person lying next to you in bed and you think, how in hell did we ever end up here? That is precisely what happened with Ashley and me. We first met at a wedding up in Cleveland. My good friend Mark was marrying a wonderfully wild and hilarious woman named Jess. Ashley was Jess's coworker at the time. She radiated confidence, not in a loud or dramatic way, but she was deeply sure of herself. She wore a simple, elegant black dress and had this subtle, sarcastic little smirk that I found captivating. When we started talking at the bar, she made a witty joke about the terrible DJ. I genuinely laughed. We ended up talking for 2 hours straight, completely lost in conversation. She had just moved into a new apartment and was working as an office manager for a dental clinic. I was 2 years into my remote cybersecurity career. Life felt stable, predictable, and simple. We began seeing each other every single weekend. She would cook these incredible, spicy shrimp tacos. I taught her how to actually enjoy watching a football game. It was easy and fun. We had real chemistry, shared a sense of humor, and had those deep, late-night talks. We even argued well, like respectful adults. After a year, we decided to get married. It was a small, intimate wedding, nothing overly fancy. It was her idea. She said she didn't need a giant spectacle to prove our love. At that time, I remember thinking, damn, I have hit the jackpot. She's independent, grounded, and so realistic. That's genuinely what I believed. Right after we exchanged vows, she expressed a desire to move to Texas. She said her family was there, her mother's health was declining, and she missed the slower southern pace of life. I was completely fine with the idea. My work was remote. I could log in from anywhere. So we settled in Plano, buying a modest 2-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood, not too far from her parents' home. She decorated the entire place in that popular warm beige and navy blue color scheme. I helped where I could, but to be honest, I mostly just stayed out of her way. She had a very specific way she liked things done, and I didn't mind accommodating her. For the first year or two, everything was perfectly fine. There was no magic, but there was also no drama. It was just a normal, comfortable life. We woke up and built a life together. We had a steady rhythm. We shared household chores, went to Home Depot on Saturdays, and watched Netflix together at night. I handled the larger bills like the mortgage, and she managed the groceries and other smaller expenses. It was all pretty standard. But somewhere along the way, the entire tone of our relationship began to shift. It was so subtle and gradual that I barely even noticed it happening. It started with little, offhand comments. Seemingly minor things like, "Do you really need another pair of those ugly sneakers?" Or, "You always manage to overcook the eggs." At first, I would just laugh it off. I thought she was just being playful or teasing me affectionately. But then, the comments continued and intensified. She'd say I talked too slowly, that I was awkward around her friends, that I should maybe wear clothes that didn't look like they came from a high schooler's closet. And the tone was no longer humorous. It was sharp, pointed, and intentionally critical. Initially, I brushed it all off. I made excuses for her, thinking maybe work was stressing her out. Perhaps her mother's health issues were weighing on her. I tried to be more helpful, more patient, more understanding. I started picking up dinner more often. I began suggesting little weekend trips to get away. She would always shut me down. "I'm too tired," she'd say. Or, "There's too much going on right now. We don't need to spend money like that." And that's when I truly realized she had stopped really looking at me. Not in the literal sense. She made eye contact, but she didn't see me anymore. She didn't see the man who had supported her decision to move across states. She didn't see the man who quietly kept our life stable and afloat behind the scenes. To her, I had slowly become just the guy who occasionally forgot to take the trash out on time. The guy whose jokes weren't funny anymore. The guy she merely tolerated. Our intimate life was the next thing to deteriorate. It first became inconsistent. Then it became rare. And then, finally, it became entirely transactional. It felt like I was negotiating a business deal instead of connecting with my own wife. I tried to talk to her about it once, telling her I felt a great distance growing between us. She just rolled her eyes and said, "You're being too sensitive, Ethan. Not everything in the world is about you." That specific line haunted me because I wasn't asking to be worshipped. I just wanted a basic connection, a little respect, a bit of warmth from my own wife. But apparently, wanting those things made me too sensitive. Now, let me be perfectly clear here. I never once raised my voice at her. I never cheated. I never belittled her or her ambitions. I wasn't a perfect husband, but I showed up every single day. I paid the bills, I made her coffee in the mornings, I rubbed her back when she complained about a tough day at work. And the most frustrating part is she knew it. She knew she had a good, loyal man. And I believe that's exactly why she stopped trying. That's why she started pushing, testing to see how far she could go, discovering how much disrespect I would absorb before I'd finally stand up for myself. And for a very long time, I didn't. I just let it all build up inside me, brick by heavy brick. Then, there was the situation with her coworkers. There was one guy in particular named Chase. He worked in sales or something similar. At first, she mentioned him only casually. But then, his name started coming up more and more frequently. I checked her phone once, I'll admit it. I saw some flirty emojis and suggestive texts. Nothing explicitly damning, but certainly not the kind of communication a married woman should be engaged in. When I confronted her about it, she immediately called me insecure. She accused me of snooping, of being paranoid, and told me I needed to grow up. So I shut down again. I retreated into silence, telling myself I was overthinking things, that maybe I really was the problem in the relationship. But the worst part of it all was that her family actively enabled this behavior. Her mother would constantly say things like, "Oh, you know how Ashley is. She has such strong opinions. You can't take everything she says so seriously." Her father, for the most part, barely acknowledged my existence. I was just a generic, placeholder son-in-law to him. The sole exception was Rachel, her cousin. She noticed everything. Every time Ashley would cut me off mid-sentence at the dinner table or make one of her signature snide remarks, Rachel would glance over at me. It wasn't a look of pity. It was a look of quiet awareness, as if she could clearly see the cracks spreading across our marriage, but she didn't know if it was her place to intervene or say anything. Now that I look back on it, I realize she did try to reach out in small, subtle ways. Once, during a family weekend barbecue, she invited me to walk the dog with her, just the two of us. We talked about work, about life, even about music. It was the first time in what felt like years that someone had actually listened to me without trying to correct me or judge my thoughts. She didn't say anything directly about Ashley's behavior, but you could feel that she understood exactly what was happening. By the time we reached our 5th year of marriage, I wasn't even sure if we were still a couple. It felt more like we were just two people who shared bills and pretended to be together for family holidays. She slept in our bed with her back permanently turned to me. She stopped laughing at my jokes entirely. Hell, she stopped talking to me at all, unless it was to coordinate errands or chores. And I suppose I stayed because a part of me was still desperately hoping for a change. I wanted things to get better. I was terrified of failure. I didn't want to become the guy who couldn't make his marriage work. But that fateful Sunday lunch was the final proof I needed. It was the moment I knew I wasn't going crazy. Her public disrespect wasn't just a figment of my imagination. She had humiliated me in front of everyone, yet again. And Rachel, of all people, was the one who quietly stood up for me, not with a confrontation, but with a simple, powerful sentence. "You don't deserve that." Not Ashley, not her mother, not anyone else at that table saw it. Only Rachel did. And that single act of recognition was the catalyst. That was the moment I finally stopped blaming myself for everything that was wrong. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just a rough patch in our marriage. This was who she had actively become. Or perhaps this was who she had always been, and my loyalty had simply blinded me to the truth for far too long. After that Sunday lunch, my entire perspective shifted. It wasn't because of what Ashley had said. Believe me, I had become accustomed to her disrespect. That was nothing new. What truly changed me was the sound of Rachel's voice. That quiet, sincere sentence, "You don't deserve that. Come upstairs." It wasn't even about the invitation to go upstairs. I didn't go. But the moment she spoke those words, it was as if someone had finally flicked on the lights in a dark room I had been stumbling through for years. After being constantly told I was too sensitive or that I was making things up, someone had finally seen the real me. That's when I knew, with absolute certainty, that I wasn't crazy. I wasn't weak. I was simply trapped in a marriage that was slowly starving my soul. And I had passively allowed it to happen. So, I didn't explode with anger. I didn't throw things or scream. I became profoundly quiet. I drove us home that evening, acting completely normal. Ashley scrolled through her phone the entire car ride, never saying a single word about what had happened at lunch. Not one word of acknowledgement. That is how you know someone has zero respect for you, when they don't even acknowledge their own cruelty. Later that night, after she had fallen asleep, I sat on the edge of our bed and just stared at the blank wall. And in that stillness, I made a firm, resolute decision. I was not going to argue with her anymore. I was not going to beg, to explain myself, or to try to prove my worth. I was simply going to start preparing my exit as quietly and efficiently as possible. And let me tell you, I am an expert at staying quiet and focused. The very next morning, I woke up at 6 a.m., made my coffee just like always, and began my day as if nothing had changed. Only this time, I had a different browser tab open discreetly on my screen. I started diligently researching divorce laws in the state of Texas. I discovered it's a community property state, meaning all assets acquired during the marriage are typically split right down the middle, 50-50ths. Unless, of course, you have solid proof of misconduct. And guess what? I had my strong suspicions. I didn't have concrete proof yet, but I had enough to start digging. All I needed was a clear trail. And with someone as careless as Ashley, it didn't take long to find one. I began meticulously checking the history of our shared bank account. She thought I never looked at it. But I'm a cybersecurity professional. Analyzing patterns and tracking data is literally what I do for a living. And sure enough, there it was. Unexplained charges from a nice hotel in Frisco from 2 weekends prior. She had told me she was at her mother's house, helping to organize the attic. There were also multiple Venmo transfers to a contact saved simply as C. A couple of late-night Uber rides to addresses I didn't recognize. It wasn't exactly rocket science to connect the dots. So I went into full ghost mode. I became calm, calculating, and intensely focused. I copied every piece of evidence I could find. I took screenshots, saved bank statements, and recorded timestamps. I gathered all of it. I backed everything up to a secure, private digital folder that she had no idea existed. I even scheduled a confidential consultation with a divorce attorney of a real sharp guy named Mitchell from Richardson. I told him the entire painful story. His advice was straightforward. If you want to protect your interests, keep acting completely normal for now. Let her think you're still asleep at the wheel. So, that is exactly what I did for the next 3 weeks. I continued playing my part perfectly. I brought her Starbucks on the days she worked from home. I politely asked about her coworkers. I even let her control the television remote every night. And during all those weeks, I planned my escape with the precision of a man engineering a prison break. I opened a new checking account in my name only. I rerouted my direct deposit paycheck to this new account. I changed all my online login credentials and email recovery information. I even reached out to my old friend Josh, who runs a successful cybersecurity firm in Denver. He had been offering me a position for over a year. I told him I was finally ready to make the move. He immediately confirmed the job was still mine. Everything was falling into place faster than I had ever anticipated.
I found a simple, furnished rental apartment in the Lakewood area of Denver with a flexible month-to-month lease. It wasn't fancy, but it was a place where I could finally breathe again. And then came the final, decisive step. I called my attorney, Mitchell, and told him 3 simple words: I'm ready now. He promptly filed the divorce papers and had her officially served at her
workplace, right in front of that dental clinic she always bragged about managing. The timing was intentionally chosen for maximum impact. Monday morning at 9:45 a.m., right when she would be sipping her almond milk latte in her office, pretending she was the queen of her little domain. When the process server placed those legal documents into her hand, she didn't call me. Not at first. She sent me a single, furious text message. What the hell is this? I didn't answer. I was already in Colorado by then. I had left a letter for her back in Texas. It wasn't dramatic or overly emotional. It was just a letter of stark facts. It read, "This marriage has been dead for years. You were the one who buried it with your words, your silence, and your lies. I stayed far longer than I should have, hoping you would finally notice. You never did. So now I am gone. I am not fighting with you. I am not here to rescue you. I am done." I didn't block her number. I didn't have to. I just stopped replying entirely. A week passed. Then 2 weeks. That's when the frantic phone calls began. Then came the pleading emails, followed by long, desperate voicemails. At first, her messages were full of pure anger, yelling, cursing, and blaming me for abandoning her and running away like a coward. Then, her tone drastically changed. She started pleading, saying she missed me, that she was confused, that she never meant any of the horrible things she had said. She even claimed that nothing had ever actually happened with Chase. But it was all too little too late. And the most satisfying part for me was that I wasn't even angry anymore. I didn't desire revenge in some dramatic, Hollywood sense. I didn't want to hurt her. I just wanted distance. I craved peace. I wanted to be able to sleep through the night without feeling like a ghost haunting my own house. I vividly remember sitting on the small patio of my new apartment in Denver one crisp morning, the cold mountain air filling my lungs, a warm coffee in my hand. I received a text message from Rachel. It was the first one since that pivotal Sunday. It read, "I hope you're doing okay." I meant what I said that day. I just stared at the screen for a long while. Then I smiled slightly and typed a simple reply, "Thank you." That meant more than you will ever know. Ashley, as expected, did not take the divorce proceedings well. She tried everything to drag the process out, claiming she deserved to keep the house and more. But my attorney, Mitchell, shut down every one of her demands, quickly using the financial records I provided. She had no legal leg to stand on. In the end, we split all our assets straight down the middle, exactly 50/50ths. The only real difference was that I had already built the foundation for a new, peaceful life, while she was suddenly stuck living in the ruins of a life she had actively helped to destroy. And as for Chase, he ghosted her almost immediately. Of course he did. Guys like that never stick around when real-life drama and court papers start flying. I heard through her sister that Ashley was forced to move back in with her parents for a while. I learned that the dental clinic had let her go and that she generally wasn't doing well. And I'm not going to lie to you. Hearing that news didn't make me feel good or triumphant. But it didn't make me feel bad either. I just felt done, as if I had finally closed a heavy, painful door that I should have walked through years and years ago. I never did go upstairs with Rachel that day. I never crossed that physical line. But her words, her simple act of kindness and recognition, they ultimately saved me. And to any person out there who feels invisible in their relationship, who is constantly belittled, mocked, and blamed for everything that goes wrong, please listen to me carefully. You don't have to have a massive explosion to leave. You don't have to break things or have a final, dramatic confrontation. You just have to stop participating. You have to disappear from the game they are playing. Let your profound absence say everything that your voice no longer can. And just watch. Watch how quickly your silence becomes the loudest, most powerful thing they have ever been forced to hear.